Zainab sat on her bed, her silk robe barely hanging on her shoulders. Hamza stepped in, wiping sweat from his brow. "Madam, you called me?" She walked toward him slowly, her voice low. "Hamza," she began, her eyes studying him. "Your pencil is what I need. I love the way it stands. Its length, its size, it's everything I've been craving." Hamza froze, his towel slipping slightly as he stared at her in shock. "Madam," he stammered, shifting uncomfortably. "This is not right. You are my boss's wife." "I'll increase your salary," Zainab interrupted, stepping closer. Her eyes locked onto his, filled with determination that made his protest disappear. "I don't care about right or wrong anymore. I need this. I need you." Hamza stepped back, shaking his head. "But madam, what if no buts?" "Hamza," she cut him off, her tone firm but pleading. "Just say yes, and I'll make sure you never have to worry about anything again." The grand ballroom sparkled with golden chandeliers and beautiful flowers. The scent of roses and lavender filled the air. Zainab stood in the center, wearing a white gown that hugged her figure. Camera flashes surrounded her. This was her fairy tale, the dream she had since childhood. Beside her stood Idris, her billionaire husband, smiling as guests congratulated them. Looking at him, her heart swelled. Idris was everything she had prayed for: wealthy, handsome, and respectful. After years of heartbreak from men who cheated and broke her spirit, she promised herself never to settle again. This time, she chose stability over passion. "Love will grow," she told herself. Their honeymoon in Paris was luxurious, expensive gifts, breathtaking sights, and romantic dinners. But when they were alone, behind closed doors, cracks began to show. It started on their wedding night. She had waited, her nerves tingling, for Idris to claim her as his wife. But the moment was over before it even began, leaving her feeling empty. At first, she blamed exhaustion. But as weeks passed, the pattern became clear. Idris's small pencil left her wanting more. One night, unable to keep silent, she turned to him in bed. "Idris," she began, her voice shaking. He responded, eyes still on his phone. "Don't you think we need to talk about us?" He finally looked at her, frowning. "What do you mean?" She swallowed hard, twisting the blanket in her fingers. "I mean, intimacy. Don't you think it's important?" He sighed, placing his phone on the nightstand. "Zainab, intimacy isn't food. We're adults. We don't need to act like teenagers. Marriage is more than that." His tone was dismissive, his words stinging like a slap. He turned his back to her, pulling the covers up to his shoulders. Zainab lay in the darkness, her chest tightening with frustration. It wasn't just about the act, it was the connection, the love, the passion she craved. But Idris didn't seem to care. In the months that followed, she tried everything to bring back the spark. She cooked his favorite meals, wearing only an apron, hoping for a reaction. He barely looked up. She bought the sexiest lingerie, standing in front of the mirror as he entered the room. "Don't you feel cold?" was all he said. One evening, she pressed herself against him while he worked, running her hands over his chest. "Not now, Zainab," he muttered, not even looking at her. Each rejection chipped away at her confidence. The silence between them grew heavier. She began to wonder, was this her punishment for rushing into marriage? And soon, her desperation would lead her to a temptation she never expected. One sunny afternoon, Zainab first noticed Hamza, their gatekeeper, in a different way. He was crouched beside one of Idris's luxury cars, changing a tire with ease. His shirt clung to his broad chest, soaked with sweat that glistened under the sun. Each movement of his arms showed his strength, his muscles flexing effortlessly. Unlike Idris, who barely acknowledged her, Hamza always greeted her warmly. His deep, soothing voice carried a charm that lingered long after he spoke. "Madam, how is everything?" he would ask, flashing a shy smile that revealed perfect white teeth. That day, Zainab's gaze lingered too long. She noticed how his trousers sat low on his hips, his strong physique undeniable. A warmth stirred inside her, something she hadn't felt in months. Over time, she began seeing him differently. He was always attentive, quick to respond to her requests. His presence filled the empty silence that Idris left behind. One afternoon, the gas cylinder knob in the kitchen got stuck. Frustrated, Zainab called out, "Hamza," no response. Expecting his usual promptness, she frowned. Then she remembered he was probably in his quarters. She stepped outside, the sun warming her bare shoulders as she walked to the small building at the far end of the compound. "Hamza?" she called again, knocking on his door. No answer. But then, she heard the faint sound of running water. He was in the shower. The door was slightly ajar. A whisper of curiosity stirred in her. Should she peek? She hesitated, but her feet moved on their own. Slowly, she pushed the door open just a little, just enough to see through the gap. Her breath hitched. Hamza stood under the stream of water, his dark skin glistening as droplets slid down his broad shoulders and sculpted abs. But what truly captured her attention, what made heat rush to her cheeks, was his pencil. It was magnificent, long, thick, and perfectly shaped. Unlike anything she had ever imagined. A wave of heat rushed through Zainab's body, and she quickly stepped back, her heart pounding. By the time she returned to the main house, her face was flushed, and her thoughts were a whirlwind of guilt and longing. But no matter how hard she tried, the image of Hamza refused to leave her mind. It invaded her dreams, replaying over and over. Soon, she found excuses to interact with him. Their casual conversations became laced with hidden meaning. She let her fingers brush against his when handing him something, held his gaze a second too long. One evening, as Hamza carried a bag of groceries into the kitchen, Zainab decided she couldn't hold back any longer. The tension inside her had reached its breaking point. "Hamza?" she called softly, her voice firm. He turned to her, his brow furrowed. "Yes, madam." She took a deep breath and stepped closer. So close there was barely space between them. "Your pencil," she whispered, locking eyes with him. "It's what I need." Hamza froze, his eyes widening in shock. "Madam, I don't understand. I've seen it," she interrupted, her cheeks burning. "That day in your bathroom, I saw it, and it's everything I've been missing." Her voice trembled with desire. Hamza swallowed hard, his Adam's apple. "Bob, madam, this is wrong. You are married to Oga." She stepped even closer, her fingers grazing his chest. "No one will know. Idris doesn't care about me. But you can give me what I need. Madam, please," he pleaded, his voice unsteady. Her fingers slid lower, her touch lingering. "You are the only one who can make me feel alive again," she whispered. Hamza's breath quickened. He was torn, but his body betrayed him. The fire between them had already been lit. That night, when the house was quiet and the world outside seemed still, Zainab invited him into her room. What began with hesitant touches soon turned into an explosion of passion. Hamza was everything Idris was not: intense, attentive, eager to please. For the first time in years, Zainab felt alive again, her body trembling from the satisfaction. She had long forgotten. As their affair deepened, she became addicted to the fire Hamza ignited in her. She knew it was wrong, but every stolen moment with him felt like reclaiming a part of herself. They met in hidden corners of the house, in the stillness of the night, their passion growing stronger each time. Yet, with every encounter, guilt weighed heavier on her heart. Idris remained oblivious, too focused on his business and social status. He was rarely home, and when he was, their conversations were about appearances, dinners to attend, deals to close, keeping their marriage picture perfect. Months later, Zainab's world changed. She began feeling nauseous, exhausted. A visit to the doctor confirmed what she already suspected: she was pregnant. A wave of mixed emotions hit her. Was the child Idris's or Hamza's? The question haunted her, but she buried her doubts. She had to protect her secret. When she told Idris, his reaction was pure joy. "Zainab, this is wonderful news," he exclaimed, lifting her off her feet in a rare display of affection. He immediately made plans, hiring the best decorators for the nursery, calling friends and family. His excitement filled the house, and soon, preparations were in full swing. He spared no expense, organizing a grand baby shower at a 5-star venue. Guests praised him for his generosity, congratulating Zainab on her radiant glow. During the celebration, Idris raised a glass. "Finally, I'll be a father. This child is a blessing. Proof that hard work and faith pay off. To my beautiful wife, Zainab, you have given me more than I could ever ask for." The room erupted in applause. Zainab smiled, her hands resting on her growing belly. But inside, her heart was heavy with guilt. Every congratulation felt hollow, every well-wisher's words like a knife twisting in her chest. Across the room, her eyes met Hamza's. He had been assigned to oversee security for the event. Their eyes locked for a brief moment, and in that silent exchange, she saw the same worry that consumed her. As the pregnancy progressed, Zainab struggled to bury her fears. Idris's excitement only deepened her guilt, but she reminded herself that she was doing what was necessary to protect her marriage, her reputation, her future. 2 years after the twins were born, whispers began spreading through the neighborhood. At first, it was subtle, curious glances, hushed conversations. But soon, the murmurs grew louder, impossible to ignore. Visitors and neighbors couldn't help but comment on the stark differences between the boys. One twin had Idris's sharp jawline, his fair complexion, and his piercing eyes, a near replica of his father. The other had a deeper, richer skin tone, full lips, and a broad nose that unmistakably resembled Hamza. At first, Idris dismissed the comments. "Twins don't always look alike," he would say with a casual shrug. But the seed of doubt had been planted. During a casual gathering, a neighbor made a comment that struck a nerve. "It's funny how one of your boys looks just like your gatekeeper, Hamza, don't you think?" The words were said with a laugh, but Idris's expression darkened. That night, after the guests had left and the house was silent, Idris closed the bedroom door behind him. "Zainab," he said, his voice eerily calm. She looked up, her heart hammering in her chest. "Why does one of our sons look so different from the other?" Her breath hitched, but she forced a smile. "They're twins, Idris. Not all twins are identical." His gaze remained fixed on her, unrelenting. "This isn't about them being identical. People are talking. I'm asking you, why does one of our sons look nothing like me?" She turned away, her hands trembling as she fiddled with the hem of her dress. "Idris, you're overthinking. Genetics can be unpredictable." His jaw tightened. His voice dropped lower, dangerously cold. "I want a DNA test. Tomorrow?" Panic surged through her veins. "A DNA test?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is that even necessary? You are their father." His expression hardened. "I said, tomorrow." Zainab nodded weakly, her mind racing. The walls she had carefully built around her secret were beginning to crumble, and she knew there was no escaping the truth. To be continued. Please subscribe to my channel for part 2.